All right, this is Alex Brown. This is Brian Weese. We are the founders of Paramount Performance. Let's go ahead and introduce yourself, Ryan. Tell us about yourself.
Brian Weese, ex-strength and conditioning coach from Texas Tech University. I cut my teeth in the business as a junior in college, actually. I wanted to do strength coaching, and at the time in the 90s, it was one of the newest professions that was a trend, an upwards trend in becoming a profession. And there was a very interesting demand that no one really understood what it was. I had to literally create my own degree plan. I had to, I did volunteer work of 2 years. So I was a student assistant, then I became a graduate assistant, and then I became a working professional from the very bottom rung.
So how many years did you spend at Texas Tech in total?
From my junior year to my last professional coaching year at Tech was 6.5.
Okay, dang, that's a long time.
I started, I learned under, at the time, she was the only female head strength and conditioning coach in all of Division I football, or in present day language, bowl championship series schools. Her name was Meg Ritchie, and she's now Meg Ritchie Stone. She is the director of strength and conditioning at Middle Tennessee State, I believe.
Okay, D1 school.
Mm-hmm. Nice. She is light years out there when it comes to how we write and design our profession as professionals nowadays.
Yes.
She basically laid the train tracks down.
I'm Alex. I have been playing soccer and football all my life. Went to Washita Baptist, played both sports there. And I was going into my second semester my junior year, and I decided I'd rather come home and start in the industry. I got tired of 6 a.m. workouts. I was like, instead of doing the 6 a.m. workouts, I'd rather start creating the 6 a.m. workouts. So I decided now would be the time to come back, finish school online, start tomorrow. And I'm just ready to get going in this industry. I still play semi-pro soccer here in Dallas, and we're working our way up.
How did you figure out, because I know how I figured out, but I'm curious as to how you figured out that you wanted to be a strength coach.
So it was about my junior year in high school, because growing up as a kid, I always wanted to play pro soccer. But as I got in high school, I realized it's still possible, and I'm still working towards it, but I won't be able to play pro and like financially make it, you know, because I wouldn't be making enough. I wouldn't be in the top league. So then I decided, you know, I never wanted to leave the fitness industry because I'm not good at math, not that great at, you know, science, any of that stuff. So I was like, why not use what I already know and make a name for myself? So stayed in the industry and tried to be the best. Yeah, and I just love sports. I've loved sports ever since I was a kid, and I've never seen myself outside of the sports world. I've always wanted to stay in the sports world.
All right.
So yeah, and honestly, working at D1 recently, I feel like I don't even work because I love it so much.
Yes.
It's fun. It's fun training people, seeing people go through the same stuff that I went through.
When you love what you do,
you don't
it's
work
not a day of work in your life.
Exactly. It's easy. it makes sense. You know, it's not like I'm stressing out. Oh my God, I got work tomorrow.
Right.
None of that. It's easy. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and I love it. So I'd say it was about junior year in high school that I kind of figured out. And especially when I started working with you, and I was like, yeah, I could do this. Yeah. So yeah, that's how it all started.
So for me, as far as figuring out it was an actual working profession, I actually started off, you won't believe this, but I started off studying a vocational school.
Really?
I thought I was gonna play with laser electro-optics, and I thought I was gonna be on the cutting edge of science, because at the time we were gonna build in Texas, the superconducting super collider down in Deaf Smith County.
Oh, wow.
And I wanted to be part of that because that was going to be the world's cutting edge of technology. And I started studying that, and then they stopped funding it with the U.S. government, and that went to hell in a handbasket. And I was sitting with my dad, and we were watching, it was during the bowl season, so Texas Tech was playing Ole Miss at the All-American Bowl in Memphis, I think is what it is. And at halftime, they interviewed that female strength and conditioning coach. Like I said, she was the only one in the United States, so everybody wanted to know what made her unique.
Yeah.
And I turned to Dad and I said, that's what I want to do. He goes, really? I said, that is exactly what I want to do. I don't want to be a physical therapist. I want to be a strength coach. And from there, that's where it went. And like I said, I had to figure out my own degree plan. I had to create my own internship because, as you know, you probably had your internship laid out as to what you had to do.
Yeah.
Your parameters. The dean of the exercise and sports science school didn't even understand what it was I was trying to do. And so that was all kinds of interesting to figure out.
And it is like, I guess back in the day they kind of referred more as personal training.
Yes.
And it's evolved. Now that I'm on the other side of the spectrum, I had a degree plan and I had an internship with Parameters. So we're like both on the opposite sides.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And the industry's been booming since 1990 to now.
Yeah, it's a light years difference, but that's 30 years. Oh my gosh, I've been in this business for 25 years.
I feel old sometimes. I'll be training kids. They're like, yeah, I work with the 07s, but I'm really at 06. And I'm like, dang, I was in 01. I feel old, but it's only going to get worse. But yeah. So let's talk, what exactly is Paramount Performance? I know you started it years back. So what was it then?
So Paramount Performance was birthed out of a necessity I was working for a sport performance company / personal training studio in downtown Dallas. And they were on the crux of trying to figure out how to do performance training in person, but not at the facility.
Okay.
But they wanted to bring the sport performance work or the speed development work, however you want to look at it, to the school. In this case, they had Episcopal School of Dallas, they had Green Hill as a couple of their customers. And so we would go out to their local places and we would enact speed development workouts. We would enact strength training workouts. Well, that company was on its way of defunct, meaning they were going out of business. And I had to sit there and think, what do I want to do? How do I want to do it? And exactly to what degree am I going to enact it? So essentially, I had to create a business plan from the bottom up, right? And that's what I did. I created a business plan. And from there, I figured out I can do speed development, I can buy my own equipment, and I can be mobile. And that's exactly what I did. And in the early 2000s, that was very novel. There was a couple of like BFS, Bigger, Faster, Stronger, had similar concepts, but they weren't going as aggressively towards speed development. Speed development is where it is. Either you can be strong, but if you're not fast, you're not going to win the games.
Yeah, exactly.
Because speed kills, right?
It does.
So, in as much as whenever I was figuring that out, I also figured out, well, my certifications need to follow that road as well. It was one thing to have a bachelor's degree, but as you and I both know, you going up through D1 and learning the commercial side, and me basically navigating my own road because it was a road that wasn't even laid out. I had to figure out, well, if a person wants to be fast, how do I teach it? What is it that it's got to be? And that's how I figured it out.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, it's a pleasure to finally be able to work with you.
What kind of speed work did you learn? And then I'll correlate. I'm kind of curious. Did you learn from D1 their model as far as education? Or
honestly, I learned more than anything from you. Working with you, honestly, like how to ace skip. I didn't know how to ace skip until I started working with you. It's just like stuff like that you pick up, and then like when we meet up with my dad at places and you kind of talk with, like it just sticks. When I'm
so the mechanics you basically learned from me.
Yeah.
So I got exposed to this while I was still strength coaching. I had as a strength coach, when you work for a university, you're assigned a series of teams. Well, in the 90s, there were 5 of us, but there were 20 different sports. So we had to branch and have different sports. Well, I had track and field was one of my major sports. And I had the track coach. He was notoriously just meticulous about how he wanted his athletes treated. And rightly so, he wants to win. So I can't blame him, right? I mean, that's why he's brought to the university is he's got a wins and losses record that he doesn't need a support, because we're called support staff at the university level. Us as strength and conditioning coaches, we don't have wins and losses, right?
Yeah, correct.
And so he didn't want to deal with some nobody that doesn't know what they're doing, because he needs to win.
Yep.
He said to me, I don't need a whole bunch of tractors that are just strong as hell. That does me no good, because they'll run 1 or 2 races and then they blow up.
Yep.
They'll blow a hamstring. They'll have too high hips. They'll not be able to handle because their backs and their low backs are too tight. He said, that does me no good, Brian. You need to figure out what it has to be and what it's going to be to get my athletes to handle 2 different kinds of seasons. They have an indoor season for track and they have an outdoor season.
Yep.
And I said, oh my, this is going to be interesting. And so I said, the only way I'm going to let you touch my athletes is you have to come out and you have to go through our workouts. You have to learn what it's going to be like, what it feels like. Now, I had played football. I had never done anything at the level of collegiate track and fields. I had no idea what kind of beatings they went through. I had to learn all of the drills in the exact fashion and tempo that they knew. It was a good thing I was still young. Oh my God.
Yeah, I bet. It's tough.
But I learned about pain.
Yeah.
But I also learned you can't be big and bound up, or you'll never survive these workouts.
Yep. Exactly.
And therein lies the mistakes of strength coaching, because they have to actually, as a strength coach, be able to think outside the box of old traditional football mentality, because it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
It's actually a very different animal. It's a very different dynamic. And the best lessons I learned was because I had to go out there and I had to see how it was all built and constructed, and what they went through, how they felt, what their time to recovery versus work was concerned. Everything that we put into practice, you can sit there and try to understand it until you felt it.
Oh, yeah.
Whole different equation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Whole different equation.
I remember in soccer we would go Monday through Saturday. We have a game on Thursday, game on Saturday. Sunday would be our off day, but we still have to come in and do recovery work. Oh my God, that was like the worst 12 weeks of my life that season, sophomore year. But it's a beating in college. High school, you practice 3 times a week, 4 times a week, play once. College, it's.
But even in high school, when you were with me, you learned the value of recovery.
Yes, my shin, I had all kinds of problems. My calves were always tight. It was like
You were very
I had like
skeptical.
lacrosse balls and my calves were so tight.
You were very skeptical of what I would introduce to you. And I said, no, I promise you, there's gonna come a day where you search for the pain.
Yeah.
And you looked at me like, what?
Yeah. And I remember like back when I was like 17, 18, when you're young, you don't feel it as much. And I was like, what do you mean only practice once a day for an hour? Like I'm out there like 3 hours a day. And then like a year later, I was like, yup, he was right. Because also, one thing I learned in college is there's a difference in your body from 18 to 21. There's a difference, because I feel it. I do one speed and training workout, next day I feel it in my glutes, my hamstrings. When I was 18, I could run for 3 hours, wouldn't feel it. So yeah.
So whenever I was building the business model, I also realized educationally, it was one thing that I understood the drills, but I didn't actually know the science and the mechanics behind why the drills were the way in which they were. And so I had to sit there and figure out, well, what is going to make me profitable, and how can I make that compelling? And that's what it really is when you speak to people in the business of what we do, you have to actually get their trust. And in order to get their trust, you have to be compelling about what it is you do. And I had to sit there and I go, well, what is this in the professional world? Well, that meant I went off to U.S. Olympic Training Center and learned U.S. weightlifting from the very, very specifics of the actual weightlifting coaches, so I could break down how they even did their own thinking. I mean, it's one thing to have an exposure in college.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother level when you get forced into, this is all you think about.
Yeah.
Because they break the details down to things and scientific, mathematical processes that you're going, oh, I didn't even realize it was this complicated.
Yeah.
The really good ones are this good, right?
Yeah.
They know how to think like that. I did that for U.S. track and field. I went and got my level 1 track and field cert. I had, whenever I began coaching at Tech, I had to get a letter from the Dean of Texas Tech Sports Science Division. Because in order at the time for me to get the gold standard of certifications, you had to have graduated with your bachelor's degree already.
Yep.
But I didn't want to wait because I knew that there was a job opening that was coming up in our staff, and the bare minimum requirements were the CSCS and a bachelor's degree and experience. I had the experience. I was about to get the bachelor's degree, and I wanted to get that license. So I had to have the dean sign off saying he's competent enough to sit for this exam. That was a long shot. And whenever I sat in the symposium that was 2 days before the exams took on, they said to look to your left and look to your right. Only one of you is going to pass the test. And there was 100 of us, at least 150 of us. And 3 of us from Tech flew out.
To take it?
I was the only one that passed it.
Wow.
Oh, it was
I'm gonna have to probably take that eventually.
exhausting. Yeah.
I have done NASM strength, stretching, and flexibility. So I've learned a lot about like the fascial nets and how to stretch properly,
Right.
and how to hold traction and stuff like that. And I'm currently next week I'm gonna take the CPT for NASM.
Good for you.
Yeah, so
Good for you.
I'm getting as many qualifications as I can.
Again, makes you marketable, makes you where you just see the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's no longer shooting from the hip. It's no longer, I'm just going to use based on my own experiences. That is where, what was the name of that high school that coach caused rhabdomyolysis? That was up in,
Oh, that was
was it Frisco? It was a Frisco high school,
I know it was somewhere around
and it
here.
was
I heard
a
about
football
that.
coach
Yeah,
for that.
he like made a bunch of kids.
And he made a
pass out.
whole bunch of their athletes hospitalized.
Yeah.
Not just sick, they were hospitalized. They were already going into kidney failure
Yeah.
because of the kinds of workouts. Well, all that coach did was use what he did back in the day when he
Yeah.
was, and didn't even think about the science behind what you should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. And that's where the industry has changed a lot. Because I remember hearing stories at Washita, the football coach in the 90s would tell players, get back in the game. The kid this one guy had a broken foot. He went back in the game and played. If that happened in today's society, that's on CNN.
Yeah.
So, but now today we have the research, the technology to analyze when a player's injured.
Yeah, we can know. I mean, with the simplest of devices, a Fitbit can tell you tenfold information that's extraordinarily useful to even us.
Yep.
That we can figure out recoveries as to what's happening with our athletes like that.
Exactly.
And it's simplistic.
In pro soccer, they have this vest on. It's
Yep.
got like a tracking device.
Mhm.
Tells you how much you ran, how many calories.
Is it Polar that makes that?
It's called StatSport. It's the one.
StatSport, okay. Because I know Polar tried to do the introduction of those thought processes with an East Coast school. They were like a pilot program.
Mm-hmm.
And they were basically coming up with what is now the industry standard.
Yep. Yeah, they all wear those. So, I mean, all the fitness people know exactly how many miles their players ran, how tired they were, their heart rate, everything. So, and like 20 years ago, they didn't have that.
No.
So, industry's just changing. And
I think they call them sports scientists now, right?
yeah,
The
sports
people
scientists.
that do that aspect
Mhm.
for the strength staff,
Yep.
because that's who they do it for, is they do the statistical analysis for the strength staff so they can compile whether or not the athletes are overtrained, undertrained,
Yep.
or dialed in, and then the strength coaches figure out their strength training programs, and then the strength staff relates with the sport coaches. This is what this portion of your team is going through. It's very detailed now.
In my college experience playing college soccer, we had an RPE sheet. So it's like 1 to 10, how hard was practice? If you're like an 8 or a 9, the coach will come talk to you, be like, all right, you're only gonna practice for an hour today, stuff like that. So I mean, the industry's changing. Like I said 20 years ago, there's no RPE sheet. If your legs are hurting, you get out there and until they're broken.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
Suck it up.
Yeah, but that leads me to my next question. Is like, what separates us from other gyms? And that would be, for at least one thing for me, is recovery. And
Recovery, a lot of it is how intellectually smart you are with enacting what you know.
yeah,
Because it's one thing to have the knowledge. Any and every person, as we come across, even in D1, you've come across guys at that commercial level that they may have had the physiques, they were real pretty, but as far as intellectual process, they had access to the same kinds of information you had, but how they used it intellectually is not very efficient at all. And that's what it is it's not the amount of knowledge, because the amount of knowledge out there now with Instagram, with Facebook, with all those others, is incredible, the amount of information that's available. The real power and the real strength as to who we really are is how you use it.
exactly.
And it's what makes us different is we understand how to take the data, we understand how to take the science, and we actually can make it work in such an advantage that your athletes don't get injured. Your athletes and kids don't get damaged. They show up to their sport or their team activities and they're game on.
Yeah. And another thing I was watching last week about, somebody was talking about the fitness industry and how it's becoming monetized, like the D1s and all that. and they're talking about how kids will go from a D1 session and then go to practice. And that's something that, when I would work with you, you'd always ask me, what'd you do today? What'd you do yesterday? And that's something that I always do now with my clients, because I've had multiple clients say, like, I'll work with them at 5 o'clock. They're like, yeah, I got basketball practice at 8. And I'm like, that's a lot. So we're gonna only do this and this and this. And so, like, I've modified workouts because I was gonna make this kid squat. And he told me he had practice.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't do that now.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for me, because I've seen coaches in D1 not do that. They'll get the kid on the squat rack. The kid goes to basketball practice an hour later.
They're devastated.
He's gonna die. and then a girl I was training, she's got D1 offers, and she practices. She was like I was in high school. It's like every day, like multiple training sessions. She goes to an ID camp over the weekend, pulls a hamstring, and I'm like, could have saw that coming. But yeah, so that's a big thing too. Is like we work with people, and we don't just throw them under a squat rack. We listen to them, see what they've been up to from an athletic perspective, and then we go from there and we modify what we need to modify.
I mean, I knew this 20 years ago whenever I was making the decision to build Paramount Performance. I knew people were being overtrained. They were being overtrained from, now, because we're obviously still seeing people and kids go through rhabdomyolysis that you never experience it till the beginning of time. So if that's the case, then I knew that there has to be a better way to do this. And the most important thing that I've ever come across, and you'll see it on Paramount Performance website, is athletes' performance and safety.
Yep.
The safety of these kids is the most important thing that you have to hold in regard first before you do anything else. The same thing applies in any aspect of industry. It's just we seem to be so back-asswards in coaching that we don't even put that.
Yep.
But now, because there's so much focus on what's happening to these athletes at the football level, safety's a lot more paramount. And because it is, you want to find people that coach and reflect that in their training and think like that.
Yeah. And I've also seen at D1, like, there's a wide range of people. I work with kids that we call them motor dummies, because like their motor skills are just...
Are they salamanders?
Dude,
They're neuromuscular salamanders?
There's this one kid, I'm obviously not going to name drop him. There's this one kid, I have him do like scoops, for the hamstring. He can't do it. And I'm like, this is going to be a difficult workout.
Did you tell him that, the band might be a better choice for him?
I'm gonna have to. But yeah, like with kids like that, I put them on. I made them stand on one leg and we play catch. So I'm working on balance.
Simple
catch.
things, right?
Yeah, simple things for that kid. And then like the girl that I'm working with that's going D1, I put her through the same kind of stuff that I went through. It's really easy to come up with workouts for her because I'm like, oh yeah, I've done that. It's easy. So I love working with people on both ends of the spectrum, and that's another thing that we hope to offer at Paramount. We want to focus on athletes, but we want to, bring everybody in as well. But we also got to worry about the market as well, because like D1, I hate to say it, they're in the wrong market right now. It's a playground in there. It's you drop your kid off, you come back in an hour, pick him up. It's not really.
It's childcare. It's not actual performance training. Real performance training. That was some of the reasons whenever I was starting to really get looked at for, once I had built a few athletes and we really had some proving ground that some of the high school kids were really starting to perform. And they were performing with safety, and they were performing with the ability to reproduce over and over results. That starts to get attention. And once that attention started to come my direction, I had to really make sure I knew what I was doing and why I was doing it, the mathematics behind it and the science. And as I said, I went and got the U.S. track and field, and I went and got the U.S. level 1 weightlifting. Then there came a school for combine prep. And I had just been asked by a sports agent to start working with his athletes. And specifically, they wanted just the speed development for me. I said, okay. And this school came about, and I went, oh my God, I need to go and learn everything I can because I'm really going to be on the hook now. And I did. I went to the school. It was out in Ohio. I had no idea where I was. But it was what sealed the deal for me inside my head as far as how to see the whole scope of putting together full-on performance training that was safe, that was effective, and that was well thought out. And that's what we do, is we're incredibly well thought out strength and conditioning specialists. And as far as professionals in the market, that's what's going to differentiate us, is these coaches that are at what you're talking about, the commercial level, you know, as well as I do, that you've seen their education levels and then you've seen their certification levels, and you're already starting to witness, and even from your own observations, you're getting your own CPT, you know, that the next step up is going to be a CSCS. It's a high game, it's a high level that you have to operate at. And just any Tom, Dick, and Harry is hanging a shingle on the wall saying, hey, I'm a trainer, or I'm a coach. And these places are willing to bring you in because it's cheaper for them. Versus someone like me, it's incredibly expensive, but there's a reason why we're expensive.
And I think another thing that separates us is we want to we want workouts specific to each person.
Yes.
Like in D1 they have like the rookie class, like just like age 7 to 11.
Right.
Devo, they all do the same workout. It doesn't matter if you're got D1 offers or you don't even play a sport. You're gonna do the same workout. And that's something that we hope to change. We want to, you know.
Yeah, you want to be able to think about the sport that the athlete participates in. And a better thing, there's also an education that needs to occur with the parents. I think the parents need to be equally involved in the decision-making process, not just to come in and say, how much money am I willing to spend to put little Johnny in D1 under 10 age, but how much am I willing to spend with little Johnny to go, he's a soccer player, he likes soccer, he's playing soccer, how can you make my little Johnny a better soccer player? And then we come up and say, okay, there's performance training for soccer athletes or ball athletes. So that would be football, soccer, things that are stop-start in nature. And here's his class. You know, think about the similarities of the natures of the class. A great example. You and my daughter are 180 degrees out of phase with each other when it came to strength and conditioning. Lauren being a swim person, I had no idea how to train a swimmer. I didn't have the first clue. And yet, I'll be damned if I was going to let anyone else put their hands on her when it came to strength training, because I knew that people wouldn't have a clue, just like I did. It's very unfamiliar waters unless you're at the collegiate level. And you've got some people that have spent some time. So I put my money where my mouth was, and I spent and paid time with swim coaches across the United States. I paid money to have interviews with them and said, how do you do this? What is it you would do? Why would you do this? And it was just like me paying for your time to say, what would you do? And I start writing. And that's how I came up with the dry land.
So what did you learn from swimming? What kind of workouts, what kind of stuff do you use with swimming?
So you're a soccer player. you use the ground as your friend when it comes to your ability to produce force, when it comes to your ability to sprint, jump, cut. The ground is your friend. In swimming, there's only two times. If we take you as a sprinter, okay, let's just use the 50 meter or the 100 meter, the two shortest races. There's only two times you use the ground to generate force. That's it.
Really, actually? While you're running? Sprinting?
On swimming.
Swimming, yeah. Okay, because you're in water.
You're in water.
Yeah.
So there's only if you're in the 50 meter sprint swimming, right? The start is from a block.
Okay, yeah.
That contributes to 25% of the entire race. So it is a big player. The strength of your start from a block is the equivalent of a vertical jump. So that's the 1-to-1. Okay. The other is how healthy are their shoulders? Oh, well, when someone came to me and I made an observation when they first started training with me, their shoulders were a little screwed up. It would have been you. And yet you went, how does this matter? And you couldn't bench press to save your life.
Yeah.
And I said, he's going to need to have his shoulders reworked, or he's as dysfunctional as it gets with his upper body. Dad looked at me like, what? And I said, yes, here's the scores, because we did an evaluation. And I said, this is where he can't move. This is where he's dysfunctional. And we understood about your legs, but he had no idea about your upper body. You knew, and you were trying to conceal it.
Yeah.
Okay, so with a swimmer, the shoulder health and their upper back stability, that's the other 75%. Their ability to maintain their momentum. How strong and stable are their shoulders?
Because they gotta have full range.
They have full range of motion, and they have to have flawless technique. Well, as an X's and O's, I draw the line. That's not my job in swimming. So technique is all about them. So if that's the case, then my line starts at how healthy are the shoulders and how powerful are they off the block. And that's it. That's all I get to coach.
Wow.
And so that's how a person has to think. You have to think about the sport, your role in the sport. You have to go out there and get your ass beat up just a bit, just like I had to whenever I was in track with that track coach. He wanted me to feel it and to understand it. And that's what makes us different in our business at Paramount Performances. We know what it feels like. We put ourselves in those positions. We then take the science as to what the best science says. And then we figure out, because it's one thing to do research, it's another to do out in the field and you're getting beat up and putting the two worlds together. It doesn't always overlap perfectly. And so that's what we do, is we figure out how to make the overlap work.
And I love putting myself through workouts. No matter if I'm playing pro or not, I'm still going to train myself.
Sure.
Because I love putting myself through stuff, because I know if it works for me, it might work for someone else.
Right.
So it's like an easy translation.
You can translate it.
Yeah, and I was learning drills like last week. The next day I went out and did them myself to make sure I liked what they looked like what they felt like. So that's something that I feel like that at least that I bring to the table as a fitness professional. Is I do everything that I coach, you know. So that's a big one. And then probably last question: what changes do you see in the fitness industry in the next 5 years? Where do you think it's heading towards? So like for us, for example, we're going mobile, hopefully in the summer. So we're gonna, instead of clients coming to our building, we're gonna go to them. So that's one change.
That's where the most profound changes are, is mobility. To have brick and mortar is no longer
because
useful.
I'm just talking to a client that I just picked up this weekend. And the little kid trains with a soccer coach in Garland. And they said, well, they don't like that because they have to drive to Garland and they'd rather just stay in Allen. For us, we come to you. So that's out of question. We don't have to worry about that.
Right.
So
and if their whole team is there nearby where that child lives, then the whole group can just come to you.
Exactly, yeah.
But that's where I see in the mobility and the big changes, they're going to be twofold. The mobility, portability of what kind of devices, the actual practicality, the working X's and O's of what it is we do in our business. Then the other is the FaceTime, the distance coaching, where let's say you're a sport coach, soccer, and there's no one near like what you and I do. But they need to know that because they need to be able to train their athletes at some semblance of level that is sensible, because they can afford, or they just can't logistically bring somebody in that's a sprint coach, or that's a speed development coach, or that's a strength and conditioning coach, right? And so what I see is the more online, there's going to be FaceTime over a field, and it's going to be you, the speed coach, you, the strength coach, interactive with your team or the coaches and the team. It's going to be that kind of mobility, and it's going to be that kind of interactivity, because even sometimes time frames don't match up. And so because of logistics, being FaceTime and being in Zoom type scenarios, but you being able to coach, you still have to be able to coach, you still have to be able to move, you still have to be able to demonstrate. But being able to do it in that space, big difference.
And a lot of people are getting lazier, so like they don't like to drive to the gym. So an online coach, it's growing. That's one thing I learned when I was reading NASM. They talked about virtual coaching and how it's up and coming. And it's only going to get better as technology grows.
As technology gets better,
it's going to get even more better. So that's a big thing too. And then last question before we finish up, because we're at 42 minutes, so we're doing pretty good. But who do you cherish, like training wise? Who have you trained that you're like, wow, I trained him? I know you've trained some NFL guys, some big names.
Right.
Julian.
I love all my athletes. From the most basic kid that I never would have thought that my influence did anything to them, until 20 years later, I'm now training their children.
Really? Who's that?
So this father put me in touch with this child at J.J. Pierce in 2001 through 4, and I trained his boy from his sophomore, junior year in high school to just like you, junior year in college. He gave it a shot to try to go pro. And now that kid is now an adult man that has children that are now able to start training with me.
Wow.
Ooh, I'm an old man. But it's moments like that, because that means that my impact was such that it was such a positive influence in their life that they realized what it is people like us do and how we can change their lives and how we've influenced their lives. Because even that person said, you know, I work out now intelligently because I remember listening to you tell me, don't do that right now, you're not prepared for that right now, or you're going to overtrain if you do. Just like some of the things you've told me. But now they tell me that that's how they think, and that's how and why they respect workouts the way in which they did, versus prior to me, they didn't have that contextual knowledge. So the biggest compliment is the kids that are now becoming parents, or even the pros that I worked with that were having children while we were training. They're able to come and find people like us and put them back with us because that's who they train, that's who they trust.
Exactly.
And it's that kind of trust that what we do, changes lives for generations.
Yeah, that's amazing. One thing that I cherish is, I'm new to the coaching, so I don't have any coaching stories, but I've had the experience of playing with players that are now in the pros. Played with Patrick Kofi, he plays for Paris FC over in France. Thomas, as I mentioned, he just made North Texas Soccer Club. So there's FC Dallas and like the league below him. He's in that league, but it's pro league. That's money on the table. So that's pretty cool. I've obviously played college with a bunch of guys, and a bunch of my college teammates that are about to graduate are gonna try to go pro. So that'll be fun to watch. And I'm gonna try to go pro myself. I'm working out every day. And, so yeah, that's what I cherish most is watching players that I've been friends with throughout my whole childhood make their dreams a reality. And I've had been able to do that, so it's been really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. You can check us out at ParamountPerformance.com.
Thank you so much. Look